We're live. Okay. So welcome to another AMA. Ask us anything. I always forget that there is Darin somewhere in the background. So today we are talking about Kubernetes, and you can ask anything you want, which does not guarantee that I will answer or he will answer anything you want, but you can ask any question you want, and we can start going. We have a couple of questions that are already prepared. Prepared, not by us, but that you asked in advance. And we are going to mix those with whichever questions you ask here, live. So anything goes, shoot, go for it. Hey, and we got a new channel member. That's amazing. Thank you so much, ICE over ES, which I assume ES is for Spain, so you're in the same country as I am. Thank you for joining the channel. That really, really, really helps a lot. So, and when I'm talking about joining the channel, I might actually put the icons over there. Here we are. You should sponsor the channel, you should join the channel, and you should do all the things that you normally do. Like it, subscribe it, and so on and so forth, right? This is confusing, too many things on the screen. Okay, so let's go with the questions. Let's see what do we have for us today. Yes, I'm not ready, but I'll try.
Okay, well, let's get through a couple of the things. So we had some earlier ones on. Rod gave us a thumbs up.
Hey.
VN.
Hey, VN.
Awesome content from Junior. Hi, Victor from TT. Okay, my dilemma, Argo workflows versus Tekton.
I think that both are great, right? And if I look at both in isolation, I would say there are certain things that are better in one or the other, but generally speaking, I put them on the same level, Argo workflows and Tekton. Now, if I would have to choose, I would go for workflows, not because it's better or worse than Tekton, but because it is part of Argo project, of Argo ecosystem. So it works really well with Argo events. Tekton doesn't have something as good as Argo events, and they're absolutely awesome, absolutely necessary. It has a better UI. It works well with Argo CD, Argo rollout. So my thumbs up goes to Argo workflows, mostly because it's part of an ecosystem, not because it's necessarily better than Tekton in isolation.
Okay. Did you have anything else to say on that?
No, that's it.
Else to add. Okay.
Nothing
right,
special.
So out of DevOps. So basically, I'm going to go through some of these, and we'll start to get into some more questions here in just a second. Out of DevOps.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Fedor. Okay.
Marcin, Belgium.
Andy. Belgium.
Oh. India.
India.
Well, this might be late over there.
I don't know. Is it? It probably is. Okay, here's a good question.
It's later than here.
Yes. Is there any best tool to help develop Helm charts?
Not that I know, to be honest. I mean, most of Helm chart development starts with being painful and then copying and pasting from other charts. Now, what I believe, I know that there are tools that help simplify that, but I think that actually, that's a wrong direction, maybe, because solving the complexity of defining Kubernetes resources. Oh, we have a new member, Junior. Thank you, Junior, for joining the channel. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Anyways, where was I? Yeah. So we have obvious complexity in managing resources required to do something in Kubernetes. Like a typical application, it's a deployment, a service, ingress, storage, this and that. And now, I do not think that we should be solving the complexity by on the client side, right? Because the complexity is still there, but it's somehow still hidden. If we have a better tool to manage Helm charts, I do not think that that's helping much. What I do think is that we should be focusing on how to simplify things inside Kubernetes. And once we do that, then defining Helm charts or Kustomize or directly Kubernetes YAML files will be automatically easier, right? So there is a complexity, we need to solve it, but it should be solved inside Kubernetes, I believe, rather than outside. And once we solve that complexity, Helm charts and everything else will be easier. And a good example of lowering the complexity would be Knative, right? Defining Knative is probably, defining Knative YAML probably takes like 20 times less lines than equivalent without Knative. Not to mention that actually you cannot do without Knative, things that Knative does without Knative, but if you could, it would be much bigger YAML. And then we have tools like Kubevela, Crossplane, where I work, and a few others that also try to do the same thing. We are trying to solve the complexity by creating new custom resources in Kubernetes instead of figuring out how to simplify it from the client side.
Okay. Hello from Assad. From David. Forgive me for probably completely butchering that name. What is the best option for managing users on Kubernetes? And I don't know that it would make any difference between on-prem or cloud, right?
I mean, you could use OIDC, connect it with your, Google Cloud account, Google account or Azure account, and then manage it outside. But assuming that we are talking about RBAC in Kubernetes directly, I do not know of a tool that simplifies that, to be honest. I end up kind of just adding more users to the manifests. Now, here's the thing. I do not know the solution to this problem, but what I do know is that I think that we are moving to the world where less people have access to Kubernetes, not more, right? Because specifically because of GitOps, right? If you're defining everything and storing those definitions in Git, and if Argo CD or Flux or Rancher Fleet are making sure that whatever we define in Git is what is running in Kubernetes cluster, then vast majority of people need to have access to Git, not to Kubernetes cluster. And when I say not to Kubernetes cluster, I mean in a write mode. You need access to Kubernetes cluster indirectly to observe what's going on, maybe Prometheus, maybe Grafana. So that's read-only mode, and indirect, not direct, really. But directly, you have kubectl access, the access through kubectl, and you can create something or destroy something. I think that the question is not how do we manage that access, but how do we remove that access for everybody, but very limited number of people.
Okay. Let's go here. Not even going to attempt. Can you even attempt the name? But there is a question.
Alexander.
Is it?
Alexander. Yeah, Alexander, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Tell me if I'm right, Alexander.
Okay, he has a question. Where to stop doing Helm and start something more robust like writing some Go? Now, before you start answering, we also have a follow-up from out of DevOps, Helm versus Kustomize. So I think these two can sort of go together, right? At least as a whole answer.
So personally, I do not like the idea of writing a definition of a state of something in Go or any other language. I do not think that that's the right direction. Now, I understand the appeal of using Go or JavaScript, Python, doesn't matter which language. And the appeal is, hey, this is so complex. And I think that this is going back to my previous answer. The appeal of Go is, hey, this is so complex that we need a programming language to manage it. And that's correct, absolutely correct. Except that I think that that complexity should be solved in a different way inside of Kubernetes clusters. We should be creating new custom resource definitions that are simple. And then simple things do not need Go. On top of that, again, I think that from tooling perspective and human perspective, defining state of something, whatever that something is better in declarative format. And if declarative format is not good enough, then that means that we have a complexity that we need to solve first before we jump into whether we should use Go or not. Now, okay, Helm versus Kustomize. Both. So if I can choose and do whatever I want in a project, I would use both. And I would use Helm for third-party dependencies. Simply, when we need to install, thank you so much. I cannot pronounce that name for donation. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. Anyway, going back to the question, When you need to manage third-party dependencies, like you need to run MongoDB inside of your cluster or Prometheus or what's not, that's so much better in Helm simply because the way how third-party vendors are packaging their applications for Kubernetes is mostly focused on Helm, so you need it. Now, that being said, I prefer Kustomize when I'm not dealing with third-party apps because I think it's a better way to define my own applications, right? Those that I control, right? Helm is great when you need to have 20,000 different... Oh, Gwoden also. Thank you, Gwoden, as well. I really appreciate it. This is amazing. Anyways, so Kustomize for internal applications. And the reason why I make those distinctions is because third-party applications need to have a lot of variations. We need to provide 20,000 different variations because for third-party by nature, you do not know who is going to use that and what are the needs of that person or that company using, let's say, MongoDB, right? So you need to have all the permutations. Hey, for some company, it could be replicated, for other, it couldn't, so that should be a variable and it should be if statement and stuff like that, right? Now, our applications, our own applications, do not have that much variation, right? Usually, you define what an application is, and then you make slight modifications, usually not huge ones, that say, hey, if it's running in production, I need a different host and maybe different number of replicas. So the number of variations is much lower, and then Kustomize works, in my personal opinion, better than Helm. So Kustomize for your apps, Helm for third-party apps.
Okay, let's move on to this next question. How to contribute to other people's projects as a DevOps practitioner? Ask.
You want to go on that
Well,
one?
I think it's just ask. Get involved with whatever community it is that you want to get involved in and figure out if they need your skill set. I mean,
Yes.
That's the simple answer.
I mean, there are some small number of communities are not welcoming, and I'm going to skip those. Vast majority of communities, they're very nice and welcoming and all this stuff. And if you just go to Slack, if you know what you want to contribute, great, power to you. If you don't know, just go to Slack and say, hey, I would like to help. What can I do? Just simple question, and I'm pretty sure that you will get the response very quickly, and somebody will give you a hand and so on and so forth. So just, the tough part is choose a project, right? Whatever you're passionate about, that's your project. Go to their Slack or whatever communication is and ask, how can I help?
Okay. I agree. Just ask. And if they say, well, we don't have anything, that's fine. Then you just move on to whatever the next thing might be for you. Let's go to this one. Let's assume that I have a deployment that reads data from 100 WebSockets. Okay. I would like to scale to 2 replicas, the first one handling 50 and the second one the rest. How do I solve that?
Okay, so that would be 50-50, right? Second is the rest.
Yeah.
50-50. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it's 50-50, if it's equally, then Kubernetes itself is already doing round robin for all the replicas, and it more or less equally distributes the load, right? Now, if you need something other than, if you said like, hey, I want 150 connections, 50 going to one and 100 to another replica, then you would probably install and use service mesh. Right? In service mesh, you can define simple or complicated rules. Like simple could be 70% there, 30% there. That could be a simple rule. But you can have more complex rules like whomever is currently handling the least amount of traffic, or whomever has the fastest response times and stuff like that.
I think the question is different here, though.
Okay, maybe.
You're saying 100 inbound. It would get split evenly. The way that I'm reading this is I have a deployment that reads data from 100 WebSockets. So inside the pod, out. So how would I do that? So your answer is correct for inbound.
Yeah.
But for an outbound connection, what would...
I don't know
how it would even do that. You'd have to... To have Kubernetes do it automatically.
Yeah, but if your application, it cannot be Kubernetes automatically because
I don't think
it's
so
up
either.
to the binary running in a container. It's not even related, I think, with Kubernetes because how do you know which of the two processes in two replicas should make the next request, right? You
Well,
know
it's a WebSocket.
where should the next request go, right? But how do you decide which one should? I have no answer.
You would have to have, I think you would have to have an operator that is managing the WebSocket distribution, which then spins up the correct amount of pods, right? Or replicas, I should say.
Yeah, probably kind of. This might be silly, so I didn't think about it. But I would guess that you would probably need to send first. Okay, so this message should be created. I should establish this communication socket. Send that information in a queue, and then let somehow one of the replicas figure out which one should take it from that queue. Right?
That seems like a reasonable, but there's still some. You would have to have some sort of
who decides which one should
visibility
should take.
Yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah. There would have to still be some sort of traffic controller to manage that.
I don't know. This is embarrassing.
Kubernetes wouldn't be able to do it for you, though. I think that's the key part.
It comes from the binary, right?
Correct.
Binary needs somehow to decide.
The binary establishes the WebSocket outbound.
Yeah.
Then you would have to manage that yourself in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm kind of I'm going towards what you said. Might not be something that you can solve outside, Kubernetes wise.
Right. Okay. What's the learning path for SREs?
Oh.
Could it be maybe
Linux and shell scripting first?
Yeah.
I think that those are the first two things. Kind of, you need to understand Linux. Doesn't matter that we are talking about now. Maybe you're running in AWS and maybe you're not setting up operating system. Still, Linux fundamentals are important, even if you're never touching directly operating system in your company, because that's the basis for writing shell scripts, right? If you don't understand Linux, you cannot write shell scripts. And when I say understand Linux, I don't mean you do not necessarily need to go deep, but some, ls, cd, cat, set, and so on and so forth. At least basics of Linux, then shell scripting. And then probably, I don't know what you think there. From there on, there is no one answer anymore because it will probably depend on what you will be assigned to in a way, right? Or what your interests are. Because there is no possibility on earth that one person will understand everything. And SRE as a group needs to handle almost everything. Kind of like everything is my domain, right? So, and not a single person can do that. Maybe if you're a small company, then one person, but
in any kind of large organization, I think knowing the fundamentals. I'll even take it one step further. Knowing the fundamentals of Linux and knowing the fundamentals of operating Windows from the command line.
Exactly.
And then whatever the details are from that is going to depend on your specific environment. So
exactly.
Do you know PowerShell? And if you can know PowerShell and the basic commands there, and on the Linux side, know Bash and a handful of commands, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I think.
Exactly. And then, again, maybe your company is using AWS. Maybe that's the next step. Maybe it's Kubernetes. Maybe it's containers. Maybe it's... Tooling probably shouldn't be, right? I probably wouldn't jump tooling should come probably later, right? Probably
it should come
one should
much
not
later.
dive into Terraform. And let's say that you're running in AWS. First, you figure out AWS. Then you dive into Terraform or Terraform-like tools, not the other way around. And this is opportunity to say something that I always say is the opposite. You start by clicking buttons. Kind of, I always tell people, hey, please do not create servers and clusters by going to AWS console or whatever and clicking buttons. But if you're learning, then that's the thing, kind of like create a VM, cluster, network, whatever, see what happens long before you kind of jump into doing it from a terminal or tool. Infrastructure is called tools.
Yeah, I did that last week. I needed to spin up, what was it? I needed to spin up a VM, and I was using Linode. I was like, okay, well, I don't have anything done. I'm going to go to Linode and go this, click. I ran all my tests in an hour and then shut it down. It's like, I didn't need that one to be what it was. So
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, if you would commit now to Linode and run it kind of like seriously, then you would probably consider using some way to define it without clicking. But not until you get serious about it, right?
Yeah, once it's operational, then yes. But if it's trying to figure something out, it's not worth it. I don't think. Let's move on to Saurav's question. How to set up multiple Kubernetes cluster ingress and set up SSL certificates using Let's Encrypt. Multiple cluster ingress. So we have an ingress that's going to be handling ingress for multiple clusters? That's how I'm reading it.
I mean, that depends whether we're talking about having a single domain going to both clusters. That's complicated. If you're talking that both clusters have ingress and in one of them it will be acme.com, I don't know, a.acme.com and another one be b.acme.com, then that's basically the same as if it's a single cluster, right?
He restated it here. So he restated the question. So how to set up multi-Kubernetes cluster ingress and set up, or was it the same? I guess it was a copy paste. Sorry, I thought it was a reward. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. So it
know.
depends whether it's the same domain that
Same domain or not. Yeah.
Exactly. If it's different domain, kind of just both have egresses and Let's Encrypt, that's the same as if it's one cluster, really, no difference. Same domain, complicated. Really complicated. And I strongly suggest not to go there until... So if you're talking about that you have a cluster that is, I don't know, hundreds of nodes big, then you start thinking about those things. Maybe when you hit 500 nodes, right? Before that, it's not worth it. You're muted. I don't know whether it's me or you, Darin.
It's me. It's
me.
Cool. By saying same domain, did you mean same root domain or same?
No. Same full domain. Like me.acme.com should forward traffic to both clusters, one or the other.
Hard.
Kind of like do some kind of load balancing between clusters. That's hard, and that's not worth it really, because it's the list of the problems is kind of like routing, because then you need to figure out about storage. How do you share the state between those clusters? Because there is state somewhere, and so on and so forth. It's simply not worth it unless we're talking about really massive scale, like hundreds of servers. Only then.
Okay. From VN, any good rate limiting solution for API/path base? While Nginx Ingress does support it, it will be affected how many pods you have running.
It's service mesh. All the things related to networking. Hey, how can we throttle? How can we retry? How can we encrypt? How can we do XYZ with networking? That's service mesh. If you need more beyond kind of basics. Now, if the question is which service mesh is your Blinkerd, choose either.
You're not going to go wrong, right? By choosing either one of those. Yeah. And there's paid ones too. There's Kong.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
there are others. Now,
Others
I've
too.
kind of sounded like, hey, those are the only two. No, those are the two most commonly used. Yeah, Kong is great. There are many options. First step is to make a decision. I'm going to use service mesh. Then you try a couple of them, and then you see whatever is the best fit.
Okay. First time on the event, probably have to leave now. When the recording's always here. This is just a live stream. So as soon as it's done, it'll automatically be in the same place. You just say play.
Yeah. The only exception, I think, that during the first hour or two, It tends to work or not work until YouTube processes it. I had problems replaying it
Really?
immediately.
Well, I
after.
know it'll be like a lower quality, but the high quality is a little bit later.
Possible, yeah.
Yeah. And you were correct. Alexander is the correct. Thank you for.
That's my Eastern origins speaking now.
Yeah. Okay. And Junior went ahead and said when we were talking about Kustomize, love Kustomize.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Oh, okay. So we got to figure out this. So I'm going to go back to the 2 super chats we got. Thanks for the content. You called them out,
Thanks
but
so much.
Jivaden actually had a question, and I didn't see that there was a question. So I apologize for that. I should be able to catch that differently. How long before Kubernetes is completely abstracted and becomes an invisible infrastructure layer? Do you think there is value going deep into Kubernetes internals?
Okay, so 2 questions, right? Abstracted, I think that we are on the way getting there. How we already see the solutions in that space, quite a few actually. Now, how long until users start using it not directly, but through those abstractions? That's a separate question. That usually takes years, right? It takes years for majority of people to adopt something. But solutions, we already see them, and they will only increase in numbers. I'm 100% convinced that the future of Kubernetes is to become invisible. I'm 100% of that, sure of that, right? Now, there will be Kubernetes, don't take me wrong, but it will become similar to what hypervisors are now, right? Do we need hypervisors? Of course. Do we care much about them? No, they just create VMs. What I care is about creating VMs, not really dealing with hypervisors. Same thing with Kubernetes. We see those. So the key really is the fight, actually, or what I think the world is now trying to figure out, and probably the end result will be both. And that's kind of, hey, you have those abstractions that are opinionated, Heroku-like. I'm not saying Heroku, but Heroku-like. And you have tools that will help you create those abstractions, right? So we're going into 2 directions, creating opinionated abstractions on top of Kubernetes and creating tools that enable companies to create opinionated abstractions, right? Both are ongoing. We already have solutions in that direction, and both are here to stay.
Okay.
Sorry, there was a second one. Do you think there is value going deep into Kubernetes? Yes. And the reason is very simple. If you don't go deep into what we have today, because tomorrow it might be changed, you will never go deep into anything. Because the moment we get those abstractions on top of Kubernetes that make Kubernetes knowledge, I will not say based, because it will not be. It's not based to understand Linux today, even though majority of people don't set it up correctly. But if you think that's the waste, then actually the moment we get that abstraction, something new is already going to start emerging, right? So it's always like that never-ending game. The moment you start thinking, I shouldn't do this because something new is coming, the moment that something new comes, then something other new will be coming as well. It's the same thing like when people ask me about, hey, should I buy this MacBook, because 3 months from now a new one will come? My answer is yes, you should buy it, because 3 months from now, again, there will be another 3 months until the next one, and the next one, and the next one, right? It's a never-ending game. So I think it's valuable. And still, we are not going to have that abstraction that's adopted by everybody like in 3 months.
Yeah. And while you were talking, we had a new member. Daniel joined up and became a YouTube member.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks so much.
Okay, so Helm for packaging entire application. Going back to this one, what about Terraform Kubernetes provider? This goes back to the Helm versus Kustomize question.
Yeah, so Terraform Kubernetes provider. So I'm here biased. I'm very biased because I work in a company behind Crossplane, right? So you might interpret my words one way or another, right? What I think that we need is Kubernetes native way to define stuff through custom resource definitions, basically, one way or another, one sort of another. Putting Terraform into Kubernetes as is, wrapping it into 2 lines of some YAML, I think it's okay, it's good, but it's not the final solution, right? simply many of the benefits. We do not get many of the benefits when we don't do it in a way Kubernetes expects us to do it. And Kubernetes expects us to have CRDs and CRs that are plugged and watching the API to know what's going, to have real controllers with real drift detection, reconciliation, and so on and so forth. So if you ask me, hey, should you, if you're the have Terraform manifests and you want to put them in some kind of provider inside of Kubernetes, I would say yes. Is that the end game? No.
And while you were saying there, we just had another member join up. Anoop joined up just a moment ago. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a great day today.
Let's get on to TT's question here. Actually, before we do that, why don't you go back and just talk about all the things.
All the things like please like the video, this one. Please subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a click. Just a click to subscribe and like a video. And what does cost a bit more is to join the channel. We really, really, really appreciate it because it helps us pay the expenses. We're not getting rich of that. I can promise you that.
No, we're not. Okay. Let's do this one first. And then Daniel, who just joined up the channel a few moments ago, we will get to your question next. So how can we connect multiple Kubernetes clusters to communicate internally?
If I change that question and say applications from different Kubernetes clusters to communicate, today my choice would, yesterday I would say we would need some form of service mesh. Today I would say Dapr. Dapr solves that problem. And not only between different Kubernetes clusters, but applications running elsewhere. It could be VM, it could be on-prem. Dapr, I believe, solves communication problem more elegantly than service mesh. It's not replacing service mesh. Let's make it clear, right? Dapr is not replacing service mesh, but communication itself, discovery of applications itself, I think it's solving it very elegantly. So I invite everybody to check Dapr. Hey, another person joined the channel. Today is a miracle. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I think I published, what was it, like 2 weeks ago or something like that, video about Dapr.
Yeah.
It's not really explaining what Dapr is, because there are many different things, like you can do direct communication through event bus, there is actors model, there are many things about Dapr, so this video is only focusing on events-based communication, pub-sub type of system. So it's not exhaustive Dapr, but it shows glimpse of what can be done. It's absolutely awesome. Not the video, Dapr.
Okay. Let's go on to Daniel's question. And again, Daniel, thanks for joining up on the channel. To what extent do you think developers should be involved in the CI/CD processes apart from pushing to Git? Do you think they should interact with the dev cluster themselves? I have a strong opinion about this.
You go.
It depends. As a good answer, right? It depends. In a large organization, it is my strongly held belief that the developers should have zero to nothing to do with the CI/CD processes. In a mid-sized to small-sized organization, you're not going to be able to do that. There's too many moving pieces in large enterprises, period, that a developer cannot be aware of. Talking about security, compliance, audit, all the other kind of things that if every development team had to deal with that themselves, it would be a losing battle. Right? If they had to do it, implement it themselves, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, more or less. But I would also say that it could be a sign of a problem. So let's say that I'm now shopping at Amazon.com, right? And I do want to have certain freedom to select whether I want fast shipping or slow shipping, right? Fast shipping costing more but arrives the same day, or slow shipping taking more time, right? So I want to have that choice. Now, if I would want to start selecting whether it should go by train or plane or boat or, bicycle, that would be a sign that actually Amazon is doing something wrong, right? It's not giving me the service I need. Because what I really need is not to go into those details. If I start going into the details, that means that the service that I'm consuming is not good. And I feel that that's the same, very similar to what is happening within companies, right? If you say, if somebody says, if a developer says, I need more control over, I want to write my own pipelines. What we need to ask ourselves is, why is that question asked? Because nobody wants more work. Nobody wants to have more work than they already have. If somebody is saying, I want to be in full control, to write my own pipelines from scratch, what that person is really saying is that the service that you are providing me with your pipelines or your flexibility within your pipelines or what's not, that service is not working for me. Right? I do not want to consume your service. I do not want to be your customer. And when I say customer, I mean internal customer. I, as a developer, do not want to buy the services you're giving me. I want to do it myself. That's a sign of that service not fulfilling the needs of its users. If you're in charge of CI/CD or what's not, platform maybe type of person, if your users, your customers are not happy with your service, they are going to try to find a workaround. And you can either improve the service or let that workaround happen. It cannot be neither.
Okay. Basically,
does that make sense for you?
Well, in my opinion, what you're saying is correct. There has to be a service available to abstract away all of the details.
Yes.
Right? And if it's not there yet today, that's okay. You got to start somewhere. But somebody should be able to figure out, okay, in my company, we're writing 100 microservices, and they're all based on Go, and they're all going into a container image and XYZ. And they're all being deployed to Kubernetes, right? There should be no variation in how any of that work is happening. Zero. Those should all be the same because they all are all rubber stamped. Now, how you bake the image shouldn't matter because it's an image. How it's being deployed to Kubernetes. There should be a standard way to deploy to Kubernetes within the organization. Right? Are you creating customized charts, customized files, whatever?
Yeah.
Or are you using something like Argo to take care of all, whatever it is, right? There should be a standard way to do it. And if you're the one out of the 90, and 99 other people have conformed, and you're the one that says, that's not good enough, I want to do my own, can I go ahead and step on it right now? You need to leave.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah, I mean, if it's one, yes. But there are situations where...
There are situations.
90 out of 99 people are saying, no, I don't want to use this. Then...
Different. That's different.
Then it's not good enough. Then you need to improve it.
Correct. Whoever you are at that point.
I think that the key here is to have the customer relationship, right? Users relationship. Kind of like, hey, if you have a business, whatever the business is, and you have thousands of customers, thousands of users, and one is not happy, you're going to say, okay, I cannot satisfy everybody. What can you do? If majority is not happy with your business, does not want to use your services, whatever those services are, it could be a restaurant, then there's something wrong with your business. So you need to satisfy users. To me, that's more generalistic answer, right?
I agree. And Daniel, thanks for watching all the content that we put out. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Cluster upgrade question. Do you upgrade in place, or do you do blue-green?
Blue-green is too expensive. Blue-green would mean that I make a completely new cluster with everything running in it.
This is where you and I disagree.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
I don't think it's too expensive as long as when you're doing that, when you're treating blue-green like rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if I've got a node pool that's running 118 and I'm going to 119, I'm way behind numbers right now.
Yeah, sure.
I'm okay with spinning up. Now, this is assuming, now I will say this, the control plane, I believe is in place. But it's a quick rolling it's a blue-green, but it's a rolling blue-green, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? That one stays in place. Right? That's whatever. But the node pools, spin up a new node pool, cordon, drain, kill. That's
if
how
you
I do it.
spin up, so you have, let's say that you have MongoDB, stateful application running in your cluster, 3 replicas.
Okay.
You spin up a new cluster. Are you going to create 3 new replicas that are going to replicate data between them first?
No.
So, but that would be blue-green.
Okay, whatever. We're getting into the semantics here.
Yeah, true.
The way I think about
You need to
blue-green...
start transferring things from one cluster to another.
Correct.
Kind of like gradually, right? Okay.
Correct.
So we are disagreeing about how we call things, right? But
Correct.
the point is that we are kind of like moving things, not kind of like, not kind of like, hey, there.
No.
So not big bang.
No.
We are moving things to the new cluster.
Draining,
Or
doing the
new
right thing.
nodes,
Yeah.
rolling updates, blue, green, whatever we want to call it, but we are gradually moving there,
Correct.
right?
When I hear blue-green, I go back to the old school way of blue-green to where I actually have 2 things running all the time. To me, that is blue-green by definition. And what I'm saying is there is a short amount of time, hours to day, short days count, to where there is a bit of double. But it's not weeks, it's not months, it's hours to days, meaning less than a week type days. I would hope, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But kind of there are the one and answers kind of option 1, option 2. Upgrade in place, no. That no.
Other
Whether
than
we are
control
now
plane.
talking,
Other than control plane.
but even control plane, I would really spin up.
Roll it. Yeah, you get
roll
a new node, and yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, not a direct upgrade in place.
Yeah, not exactly. I like immutable, kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
shut down, put the new one, or put the new one, shut down, and then repeat.
Yeah, because the good thing about not doing upgrade or doing that replacement is I might be able to get new CPU, new memory, new disk. I'm getting that for basically free just because I'm not doing an in-place upgrade.
Now there is exception, bare metal. Kind of like it's bare metal.
It's
you
what
need
it
to
is.
upgrade.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure where I'm going next. Because I think, was Adam's question about, that was the WebSocket one, I think.
Yeah, I think that
I've lost
was
track. Yeah,
socket
that was
thing
the WebSocket one. Yeah.
that we have no idea.
Yeah. Egress controller, downward API. Okay. All right, so let's go here from Ravi. What are the best tools we need to use for end-to-end management, like Git repos, build deployment on Kubernetes or RKE, all full auto-deploy, end-to-end building for MLA or any web app? The best tools. The ones that you use. Okay, this is a life lesson. What are the best tools? It's the ones that you use. That's the first thing to do. And then from there, you start picking, okay, you've used it and you figured out, okay, this didn't work out so great. Then you go take a look at another one. Just like Victor was saying a moment ago, Dapper is a good answer for cross-cluster communication or internal communication. But that's because it's new-ish. If we'd have said this 2 years ago, we couldn't have said Dapper. Right? It wouldn't have been an option. So pick something that you're going to use.
One thing that I would like to say, and that's more like kind of to remove the myth. I'm now hanging on the auto-deploy thing and ignoring for a second ML and AI because it probably doesn't make much difference. If you want to auto-deploy, you need some form of CD, continuous delivery. And I'm repeating this over and over again. That's not Argo CD and that's not Flux. If you want to auto-deploy, you need pipelines. You need to build stuff. You need to test stuff, so on and so forth. And if you do use GitOps, that's not CD, that's just a part of the process. And I'm saying that because I often kind of like, hey, we can solve all our automation with Argo CD. No. Kind of like only a tiny fraction of it.
Okay. Sorry, I was answering another question. Another question from Daniel. What solutions are there available for mediating egress traffic from the cluster? For the purpose of TLS, think forward proxies, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have enough experience with egress traffic myself.
Okay, so for me, I don't care about the egress traffic from the cluster. I care about the egress traffic outside of my network. I can't think of something that I would do that's cluster specific.
I mean, that's kind of, I think that the question is kind of when it goes out of the cluster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember the case where I had traffic going out beyond kind of like, hey, I need to send a API request to Twitter.
Right, like you're now egressing completely outside, right,
Yeah.
of whatever your defined network is. And even in other places I've been, we only cared about that kind of egress at the border. That's the only place we cared about it. We didn't care about it internally.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've not seen a. I don't know. Let's go to this next question. What should we have? A dedicated development environment for developer testing or a local environment? What's the best practices we follow while setting up a local environment for dev testing? You don't need a local environment. Both are fine, but
Both are fine, right? It often depends on a skill set, right? Do you want to set it up locally? Just please don't expect others to set up local development environment, or you want to have a virtual cluster inside of our cluster. Both are fine, really. And I'm going back and forth on that one. I really have no strong opinion whether it should be remote or local, at least not without additional information. So you should have a development environment. That's whether it's local or remote doesn't matter. What does matter? Okay, so here's the thing. What does matter is that development environment shouldn't be shared. That's the important thing. It cannot. I've seen in the past kind of like this is a server where everybody, all the development is going, and then we ended up spending half of the time speaking with each other, kind of, hey, can I deploy my stuff now? Or you're still working because if I deploy my stuff, I will overwrite your stuff. So as long as everybody have their own development environment, either option is fine.
okay.
And best practice for setting up local environment for dev testing or whatever is to keep it as close as you can to production. Like if your production is Kubernetes, please run Kubernetes. Don't use Docker Compose. If your production is Docker Compose, then please use Docker Compose. Do not use Kubernetes. Or whatever else you might be having. Try to mimic. It's not possible 100%, just to clarify. It's not going to be 100%. But at least try to get as close as you can to production.
Let's move on here to Bitmonkey. I would like to think beyond Kubernetes. What are your thoughts about this?
I think that the next step is what we spoke before. It's about making Kubernetes invisible. I don't think that we will see, we are not yet there to see beyond Kubernetes as if it doesn't exist. Something replaces Kubernetes. We are far away from that yet, but we will see services built on top of Kubernetes that you do not know that it's Kubernetes. That's where we are going. Like Azure Container Apps, I believe is built on Kubernetes, but I'm not 100% sure. And it doesn't matter, really. If you use Azure Container Apps, you're effectively do not care whether it's Kubernetes or no. That's the next stage. So it's making it invisible, not yet replacing. We will eventually replace it. We'll replace everything, but we're not even close to that now.
I don't think we'll ever replace everything because mainframe.
Yeah, it will never be fully replaced. Now, yeah. Kubernetes is going to stay with us forever, just like mainframe will stay. But kind of, we will be thinking about in a significant quantity of people and companies going to something else. We are not. I don't see that on horizon yet.
No. This is interesting. Do you think keeping the latest version of Kubernetes is important and necessary? Latest.
Yes.
I'm going to say latest. Here for a moment.
Okay, latest, no. I would not jump on kind of every patch version I need to update every day, right? And I think it's quite okay to be, you should probably be on the second latest minor version. That's probably the sweet spot.
I think so too. Don't take the .1. Wait for the .2 or the .3. If node .2 comes out after 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever your tolerance level is, then the .1's probably okay because there hasn't been any movement. Now, the current shipping version is what, 23? I've lost count.
I think it's 23 or 22 or 20. I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, so from a latest point, I would probably trail behind a quarter. So if 23 is the current GA, then right now I'm fine running 22. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I'll go to 23 next. I'm okay staying one full revision behind.
No, not only that I'm okay, I think that that's the right choice because you're very close to latest, but you're not kind of flying that close to the sun that you get burned, right?
Right. Now, that's your production environments or production-like environments or items that you should be treating like production. Should you have another cluster that is the latest? And I believe that answer is yes. That you can be automatically just putting whatever your current code is into there and see what's breaking.
And there comes the thing, right? The question, should we be testing, one way or another, manual, automatic, I'm not entering there. Should we be testing upgrades with real workloads? And I hope that, Darren, you must agree, right? The answer is huge yes. And if you're testing things before just blindly upgrading production, that means that you cannot be on the latest. You cannot be on the latest because it takes time, right? When now new something.0 comes, by the time you test it and what's or not, it will already be .5. Anyways.
Yeah. We're getting close to time. We've got about 10 minutes left. Question from Scott Rosenberg. Have you looked at the Carvel tools yet? I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Specifically for multi-cluster service discovery and service mesh, I found that HashiCorp console is by far the best option.
Okay, those are kind of two things, right? Carvel from VMware, a bunch of tools. I have prepared the material that I'm halfway through to publish it. In isolation, each of those tools are not bringing much, maybe even damaging. When working together, there is value, but also questionable value. That would be a gist of it, right? I'm not saying that they're bad. They're not bad, but they're not. They have some serious downsides, conceptual downsides that I'm not necessarily agreeing with, as Carvel is concerned. Now, as what was the second for multi-cluster service discovery and service mesh? I found that HashiCorp console is by far the best. Yes, HashiCorp console is great. I wouldn't call it the best. I think that Hashi is somehow fighting Kubernetes, and that's not necessarily the good thing, right? I think that Nomad is really stopping progression of Hashi as a company too much. Instead of fully embracing Kubernetes and what is today, trying to fit it into Nomad somehow, and that's somehow slowing them down. I'm not saying console is a great tool, right? But Hashi should have been the company that came up with Dapper, for example.
That would have been...
And they could have. They're just as if they're slowed down on that area, right? There are areas where they're absolutely amazing, right? But
Yep. Angel, I went back through the thread. I did not see any questions from you before this one, so we didn't skip anything that I saw. Yeah. What are the best tools we need to select repository? Wait, this is the AM. Okay, we've already answered this one. Okay, here we go. TechBoy 007 Bond. Ideas to sell Kubernetes to my CTO. They have a bad opinion of it from a poor on-premise project from 2016. Everybody had a miserable time with Kubernetes in 2016. I'm wanting to use GKE in a new Spring Boot project to have consistent environments. I wouldn't use GKE. If you're on Google, use Google Cloud Run if you can, if it's just a Spring Boot project.
Yeah.
Right? Why
have to be
manage a
Kubernetes.
cluster? Huh?
Doesn't have to be Kubernetes.
It does, exactly. I need to, based on what you're saying here, it's a Spring Boot project. It's just a container. So where can I run my container?
Yeah. Azure Container Apps,
Wherever.
GKE, no, Google Cloud Run, or what, I don't know, in AWS that would be, I don't know whether it's Lightsail.
Well, which
maybe?
15 of them? I'm not sure.
Exactly.
You could use Lightsail. You could use Elastic Beanstalk. You could use...
But assuming
of
for a second that actually Kubernetes is the right choice, for a second, assuming that that's the case, right? Not necessarily is, but if that's the case, kind of, it's said that convincing is necessary. Because if this question came in 2016, I would say, okay, I mean, I understand the concerns. Kind of like we're talking about something that is new, something that was not yet adopted by everybody, something where not everybody is investing in and stuff like that. But today, in 2022, we're talking about a project that everybody contributes to, that everybody invests money into, and that almost everybody is using. Kind of like, it would be almost like, I think it's an easier sell even than cloud. I could find more arguments, even if I wouldn't agree, in favor of not using cloud than not using Kubernetes. Said. I have no recommendation, kind of like, assuming that Kubernetes is the right choice. As Danny said, it might easily not be. Don't go crazy. But if that's the right choice, then
And
there's
thanks to
nothing
Angel.
I can do to help, kind of like.
Yeah.
Kind of,
I want to go ahead and say thanks to Angel for the super chat that just came in. You missed it
thank
come
you.
up on the screen. So thanks, Angel. Let's go with one last question that we can answer here in the next couple of minutes.
Sure.
We'll take it from Jivan. Should I care about how etcd stores data and how certificates work between nodes in the control plane?
Depends whether you're setting up Kubernetes yourself or no. If you're using managed Kubernetes, then it's not that whether you care or no, you cannot. You have no influence if you use GKE, how etcd is set up, right? You're not controlling master nodes, or how we call them. It's not master nodes, probably. Control plane nodes. Now, if you're setting up Kubernetes yourself, then you need to make sure that that's encrypted. That's the main thing, because by default, you will get unencrypted stuff in etcd, and then you kind of, hey, I'm using secrets, I'm using Vault, everything is secure, until it gets to etcd, and everything gets to etcd, and then it's completely open over there. So make sure that that's encrypted.
Okay. Since we're close here, I'm going to... Scott had asked where you had brought up Dapper. Dapper is going to require changes to code, so sure, it would be a trade-off at that point, but...
Not necessarily. So
No?
if you want to do direct communication, it doesn't require changes to the code. Maybe the address, right? But address, if you change from service to service mesh, the other addresses, but excluding the address, kind of like this is where you go. Direct communication is not really requiring changes to code. Now, pub sub does. But again, if you're not using pub sub, you need to make changes to the code to use pub sub, no matter whether we are talking about Dapper or something else. Because listening for events and pushing events is different than sending requests to other services.
Okay.
Right? But
Yeah.
if you're already using pub sub, pushing messages and listening to messages in a generic way, right? You could actually switch. I haven't tried it, but I'm convinced that you could switch to Dapper without changing the code, except maybe the address where everything goes.
Right. Okay, let's see if we can squeeze in one last question, and then I'll get to one comment, and then we're going to wrap it up. Any opinions about Spinnaker? I don't have anything.
No opinions.
No opinions. I mean, and that's not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I just don't have any opinions.
I haven't used Spinnaker in many years.
I probably
Literally
last time
no
I used
opinions.
Spinnaker was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't remember. So I'm going to let this last comment be, thanks for the session, but it should be more than 1 hour. No, because this is my
It
lunch
would be
break.
nice
It would be nice.
I'm actually half an hour late for a meeting. and my bet is that actually the people waiting for me in a meeting are not watching this. Otherwise, I'm in deep trouble.
Yeah. So anyway, Ravi, thanks for that. We wish we could go longer, but an hour is about all that both of us can actually do at one time. So I'll let that be it for me. Why don't you go ahead and close it out?
The thing I must say is that we probably missed a bunch of you. A lot of you became members and subscribed and contributing to this. We probably missed to put you on the screen, all of you. Terribly sorry for that, but thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate all of you.